I am so
Oh.
vacation.
Friends, her car, I walked by her car, she's got antlers on it, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. And then I walked around, and I'm like, and a red nose on the front. I'm like, well, that is adorable.
Happy holidays. No, you're fine. Yeah, I know tomorrow as well. Better. You had a productive. Rob and I were both going to try to come to that, and then we were busy, and then we had our subcommittee too. So ready. All right. Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. It is 5 o'clock. We will commence the Human Rights meeting for December. Could I please get a call to order?
Ani Aden. Sihama Mehdi.
Here.
Jennifer Troska.
Here.
Mikal Pauling Normandin.
Here.
Rachel Stone.
Here.
Deb White.
Here. Thank you. We will move on to our land acknowledgement. We, the Human Rights Commission, collectively and with gratitude, acknowledge the sacred land the city of Moorhead is built upon. We acknowledge the people who have resided here for generations and recognize the spirit of the Dakota, Ojibwe, and Métis and all indigenous communities permeates this land. The contribution of the indigenous people shall not be forgotten, nor will the success that is achieved by the people of the land. We will continue to advocate, honor, and unite for the indigenous people of this land. Moving on to any agenda amendments. Do we have any amendments? Okay. None. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda and approval minutes from November 15, 2023?
All motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
That has been approved. All right, and moving on, we will go on to our guest speaker and also the 2023 Human Rights Award recipient, M. Christie. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you very much for awarding me a 2023 Moorhead Human Rights Award. My nomination was a complete surprise and winning even more so. I appreciate receiving an invitation to discuss my advocacy and goals as one of the 4 award recipients. Since being invited to the Outreach and Education Subcommittee of this commission last July, I've enjoyed learning about how my city's government works and what we as volunteers with the Human Rights Commission can do to keep Moorhead at the forefront of human rights. This year, I began advocating for gender equity in FM media, but inclusive arts access has been a long-time passion of mine. Fargo Moorhead Rocks was founded in 2016 by Paul Linnell. When I found the group on Facebook in 2018, I immediately loved their premise: paint and hide rocks to make strangers smile. As a hyper-local chapter of the global Kindness Rocks movement, I recognize the potential for positive impact in my community and beyond, spreading art and joy exponentially as rocks traveled from one person and one location to the next. When I experienced the therapeutic benefits of painting such an accessible, low-pressure medium, I began sharing the joy broadly by hosting public events at which I regularly witnessed folks of all ages, abilities, and walks of life get swept away in the sheer joy and freedom of painting a rock. When I consider the success of my rock painting events, as well as other human rights advocacy I've engaged in, Three themes strike me as particularly important, which I have learned and continue to learn through my work. How important it is to actively educate myself about and increase accessibility in all ways. To show up, mind, body, and spirit ready for all commitments, and to put in the work, regardless of recognition or remuneration. Since 2018, I've hosted over 30 free rock painting events. In that time, I've made sure participation is completely free, without even the social pressure of a free will donation bucket, because financial barriers will always prevent those who need help most from accessing the resources needed to survive and thrive, including art. However, understanding accessibility and improving on it is an ongoing journey, as it is for everyone who is still taking in new information and adapting accordingly. In other words, learning. I have hosted events in some locations easily accessible by personal vehicle, but not for pedestrians, bus riders, and cyclists. Some venues had bathrooms that were not accessible to everyone, and even some park shelters had seating that was not equitable for those with mobility aids. Accessibility is something I'm still actively working to improve for my events, and I recognize that improvement will be ongoing and never-ending. There's no such thing as being so completely inclusive that no further room for improvement is possible, because as society develops its understanding of the variety of human experiences and needs, we will, as lifelong learners, adopt new best practices, develop new accommodations, and change our views as new information becomes available. As the HRC seeks to improve its accessibility through its online presence, making meetings and events consistent across city websites and calendars, creating events to make our meetings shareable across social media, etc., it is important to remember that more people being aware of this Commission's activities and attending meetings is likely to result in this Commission being informed of more ways the HRC can improve upon accessibility for itself and for Moorhead. It is my firm hope that I and all human rights advocates can always use public response to generate forward momentum and ever greater accessibility, creating a positive feedback loop of engagement and action. As the HRC works to include youth representation on this Commission and elsewhere in city government, I urge you to consider how important it is for these youth not only to have a voice, but a vote in the decisions made. Without the power to fully participate in the process, the promises of inclusion cannot be fully realized. The current HRC charter says youth representatives can be aged 12 to 18, but I ask you to include college students as potential youth representatives, because it is not reasonable to expect students of any age to apply for a full 3-year term as a commissioner. Yet students of Moorhead's many institutions of learning definitely need to be part of the city's decision-making, including regarding human rights. Pursuing accessibility allows everyone to participate, but to achieve this goal, there must be events to participate in, and this requires us as leaders to show up. At the first public event I ever did, a young child came up to me almost crying and trembled, "I got paint on my hands," as if they thought they would be in trouble. I showed them my own paint-covered hands and assured, all good artists get paint on their hands. The young person's eyes widened as they exclaimed, "I'm an artist." Since seeing the power of that word, I've encouraged everyone who paints with me to recognize themselves as artists. When I realized what a therapeutic, empowering, and joyful asset free rock painting was to those who attended, I made a personal commitment to show up for my community and provide whatever artistic support I could. Apart from a serious illness, I hosted all the events I planned, even on days when I had other pressing things in my life, even on days when I really wanted to stay home. But showing up is more than being bodily present. I showed up as my most authentic self, including being openly pansexual and genderqueer in an unobtrusive but unmistakable way, so I could be the kind of representation I wish I'd been able to see as a child who knew that neither boy nor girl fit me. I engaged meaningfully with artists of all ages, spent extra time with people who came to events alone but seemed to appreciate conversation, and when the opportunity arose, sent rocks and painting supplies home with people who fell in love with the activity but couldn't afford to buy a whole set of materials to get started. My overall goal isn't just to host fun rock painting events, but to help heal our hurting world in whatever way I can in my small corner of it. Similarly, the Human Rights Commission isn't a government body just so Moorhead can say, "We care about human rights because we have a commission." The Commission exists because Moorhead cares about human rights. The HRC's outreach, education, and recommendations can have a lasting positive impact on this community and those it borders, but we have to make it a priority, even in our busy lives. When we have the chance to show up and make a difference, we need to take that task upon ourselves with a sense of both responsibility and joy. That's how I approach my rock painting events, which may seem simple, but are a lot of work. I select only the most paintable rocks from a giant pile at a landscaping facility. I load the rocks into buckets and haul them home. I thoroughly wash each rock, dry them, store them in my garage, and haul them to events. After events, there is more hauling and storing. In addition to finishing half-painted rocks, hand labeling each one with the group name, and sealing each rock before hiding them around with the community, something I've done with almost 2,000 rocks to date. In other words, I spend a lot of time literally hauling rocks. But that is the work that is required to make this valuable resource available to all. It's not glamorous, and I'll be real with you, the labeling part at least especially is not fun. But the end result is improving arts access in my community. It's worth every investment of time, effort, and inhalers for my asthma. It is worth every ounce of sweat. The work required of this commission, though less sweaty, requires no less effort and engagement. Though human rights commissioners are voluntary and unpaid, this does not make this work any less worthy of our attention than paid employment. As the HRC examines its priorities and function, including the accuracy and intentions of the HRC Charter, a significant amount of time and work will be required beyond the Commission's current time commitments, and that work will come without remuneration or public recognition, but not without reward. Our reward is a better Moorhead for generations to come, a lasting legacy of our city staying at the forefront of human rights, rather than history recording how we were dragged along reluctantly into inclusivity. While obviously physical survival is paramount, I truly believe art is a human right every much as bit as clean water, shelter, food, education, and healthcare. I believe every human not only deserves, but needs the time and resources to learn about art, experience art, contemplate what we've experienced, acquire skills, and create art for ourselves, even if we never show that art to another person, even if that art is never sold for money, even if that art is not, by any academic definition, good. The notion that financial profitability is the most important marker of success is antithetical to human rights because improving the lives of everyone in your community, ensuring clean water, shelter, food, education, healthcare, and yes, art and gender equity in media is going to come with a price tag. Once again, I would like to thank this commission for recognizing my efforts in inclusive arts access and gender advocacy with this year's Human Rights Award, and for the chance to participate in the efforts of the Human Rights Commission to foster awareness and understanding of human rights issues and laws in our government and our community. I feel inspired and determined to continue working to make Moorhead a better, more equitable place for all. As we and others work together to find solutions for the challenges facing our community, we know at the outset that solutions will not be easy, but will require a commitment to accessibility, to showing up, and to putting in the work, and to holding ourselves accountable to our community for doing so. Thank you. I didn't know if you guys had any questions or anything, but if you do, I'm open to that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, not only for that powerful speech, but your advocacy, your work. It really shows your passion. I've really enjoyed having you in the spaces and working with our Human Rights Commission. Definitely reflect on what we can do and the partnership we can make to be accountable and hold others accountable. So thank you. I look forward to continuing to work with even though sometimes it requires a lot of work and some setbacks. But know that myself, and I think all the commissioners here appreciate your work and definitely will work with you within the advocacy and spaces for inclusivity and advocating for everyone in our community.
I just also want to second everything Siham said.
What you had to say today was very powerful. I think I got goosebumps about 10 times. So that was awesome. And I also really appreciate the rock painting. I think it's beautiful, and I'm happy that you're here. Thank you.
Thank you. Once you know painted rocks exist, you never see the world the same way again, because now you know they might be out there. So when you're out wandering our wonderful community, you never know where you might find some magic painted pebbles. Keep on the lookout. Thank you.
Wonderful, and congratulations again. Next, we have community partners. Do we have any community partners today? We'll move on to citizens to be heard. I do believe we have citizens to be heard. We have whoever would like to go first.
Hello.
You can state your name and whether or not you're a Moorhead resident.
My name is Barbara Dunn, and I live in Fargo. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'd like to thank the Commission for allowing me to speak, especially since I live across the river. I just want to quickly talk about the issue of pronouns, if I could. I have to say I disagree with the Moorhead City Council's decision that the paper of record shouldn't be required or even asked to use a person's preferred pronouns, because it's the paper's First Amendment right not to do so. Among other things, I'm a librarian by education, and I come at this from a linguistic standpoint. So I looked it up. I have a printout from the online etymology dictionary, which uses a long list of good sources, including the Oxford English Dictionary. And, well, what are pronouns? They're literally, they stand in place of nouns. What are nouns? A noun, as we've been told forever, is a person, place, or thing, but it's the name of a person, place, or thing. We all learned that a long time ago. So a pronoun that stands in place of the name of a person, place, or thing. I have to ask, why is it a First Amendment issue for a newspaper or a journalist to be allowed to misname a person? It seems rude to me. Is it okay for a newspaper to decide that my name is something other than Barbara Dunn, like, I don't know, Tom Hollander? Do they get the right to refer to me as him because it's their First Amendment right to decide that I'm a him, even though I'm a her? I was also taught that freedoms in the Constitution, they're limited by other people's rights. Is it more someone else's right to decide what my name is than it is my right to say who I am? At the end here, I just want to say that I myself often make the mistake of getting the wrong pronoun. I'm 63, and there are ruts in my brain from, from 63 years, basically, of using the same pronouns all the time or the same assumptions all the time. But when I do, I correct myself. I apologize sincerely, because I really didn't mean to do it. And we just go on. It's embarrassing, but it's really not hard. And, in our country, we value self-determination almost above anything else. To me, it seems like a normal part of civilized, courteous behavior to refer to the name that a person gives you when you meet them. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you again for letting me speak.
Thank you so much for speaking, Barbara. I appreciate your comments. Other comments? We'll have another citizen to be heard. State your name and whether you're a Moorhead resident.
Good evening. My name is Alex Milton. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a community activist with a master's degree in human rights, and I live right here in Moorhead. During this section of the meeting, I want to make it very clear that I am speaking as myself and not as any of the organizations that I am a part of or affiliated with. Tonight, I am speaking to you to describe and address accessibility concerns within our public transit system. For those of you who do not know, I have a medical condition that results in chronic fainting. I often receive little to no warning on when I am going to pass out, making it incredibly unsafe for me to drive and making me reliant on the public transit systems that are present in my community. I live in South Moorhead, where access to bus stops and a variety of routes is especially scarce. But to highlight some of the specifics that exist throughout our city, there are only 5 bus routes in all of Moorhead, and only one of them goes through my ward. Many of our bus stops are improperly lit. Many of our bus stops also lack benches and shelters, and no routes operate on Sundays in our community. I also want to point out that there is a lack of direct routes. Transfers may seem simple to able-bodied people, but transfers between different bus routes can create barriers for the disabled community when they need to use a mobility aid to get to the next stop, or if they need to spend a long time waiting at an inaccessible bus stop. All of these issues disproportionately impact people that use mobility aids, people with low vision, our elders, and people who are new to our community. Well-funded transit systems in our community would benefit more than just the disabled community. Elders and people with lower incomes are also often reliant on public transit systems. This is especially important while reviewing 2020 census data for Moorhead. For example, 12.4% of Moorhead's population is over the age of 65. 9.6% of the people in Moorhead under the age of 65 have reported having a disability, and this is likely not comprehensive due to census questions on disability not representing all disabilities and the impacts that they have. Also pointing out that since this census data is from 2020, this likely does not account for the number of people that are now disabled due to COVID-19 and the effects of the disease. I also want to point out that 18.4% of people in Moorhead live below the poverty line. I also want to note that the census uses the federal definition of poverty, which I could go on and on about, quite honestly, and how that is not comprehensive or accurate to today's standards. I know that the decisions that our transit community makes for the Fargo-Moorhead area are often not always easy. Transit agencies across the country are grossly underfunded and are experiencing severe staffing shortages. I do believe that they are doing the best that they can with the resources that they have been given. Lori from Matt Bus has already reached out to me directly, and we are planning to have a conversation around these issues. I wanted to take tonight to educate and remind the members of the commission that access to public transit ties directly back to human rights. I have shared my concerns with the Attorney General's office because they were asking for feedback from Moorhead residents last week, and they have connected back with me, letting me know that they will be getting me in contact with the offices of Representative Keeler and Senator Kupak. I will continue to update you as this work moves forward. My formal asks to the Commission tonight are to open a conversation with our transportation departments about accessibility measures, to take into account transit options as an accessibility measure while you, as a commission, host events, and to otherwise be advocates for disability rights. Thank you, and if you have any clarifying questions, I am happy to answer.
Thank you, Alex. Do we have any questions? I think
I wonder, do we want to bring this up under
Yep.
new business too, as some things that we might be able
Yes.
to take as next steps?
I think that bringing this up and discussing it and having individuals from the community come to the Human Rights Commission, just like we discuss housing and other issues that persist in our community, is very valuable right now. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Could I, Madam Chair, could I ask that we add this under new business and also the previous, briefly touch on, because I have some updates so regarding some information from our previous community member too.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you so much, Alex. We'll go on to law enforcement updates.
Good evening. The only pieces I have for tonight is just to update the commission on some events that we've had in December. I reviewed some of our events, and a couple that I talked about last month was Shop with a Cop, which occurred last night. There were over 60 children that were participating through referrals, and 30 law enforcement officers were involved, along with over 20 volunteers that helped with that event. So they were able to purchase over $6,000 worth of gifts for families in need and for the kids themselves. So it was another successful event that, again, our officers did as a volunteer effort. So that was nice to see. And the second one I followed up on was the Giving Tree, which is for youth that are residing or temporary staying at Churches United. And there were 16 kids that were able to provide gifts for them, and Santa delivered them along with some law enforcement elves. So those are some of the pieces that we looked at. And the last piece that I just have, again, is planning for 2024 on doing some specialty talks in regards to, with your recommendation, I'll do the scheduling of our staff. I did see in the subcommittee notes that we had a recommendation for January. I'm wondering, I know that's the trafficking month, but wondering if you want to hear from our youth programming in January, because in my other notes, you wanted to be involved in the yearly events or some of them. So if I figured if we did this presentation in January, you would have that year schedule to be able to make some plans. I just didn't want to put it off until spring or summer and then have some of those events missed. So that will be up to the commission to decide what you want to do on your scheduling. But that was my reasoning for trying to do that youth presentation in the beginning of the year, so you can hear what they are and when they are. So if you want to be involved, their partner, that would be at least give you the calendar and a chance to plan.
Good, thank you, Captain Swenson. I think having the youth presentation and information in January is a great idea as well. If we need to move anything else around, I don't know how the Education and Outreach
I think, yeah, I'm looking at you too. I think that's okay. And I wanted to make sure you saw that because I think we finished this conversation after you were gone last time. And so then we plugged in 3 times a year. Yeah, and it'd be tentative, so this would be where we could then have these times set aside for those types of presentations. So was that part okay with you?
Yeah, I just wanted to look at that schedule in regards to that first one. I just didn't want to have us talk about something that already occurred when you had requested to be involved in those pieces. So that's why I'm looking at that schedule a little differently.
Then we could maybe, even though January is Human Trafficking Month, if we wanted to, if we didn't have other questions, like, so then if we moved what you're working on to January, we maybe could move them to March?
As long as I have enough time to help schedule with that, so.
Okay. That's all.
That's all I had, so.
Okay.
If there's changes, obviously, you can let me know offline. I'm between meetings, so thank you.
Good, thank you, Swenson. All right, we will move on to regular business, and I want to take the opportunity to thank all our volunteers, as well as Councilmember Deb White for the Pangea Hospitality Room. Thank you to Christy for volunteering, as well as Heather Nissemeyer, Councilmember Heather Nissemeyer, Rachel Stone, Jen Troska. It was really successful. I think Pangea and anybody else I would have missed, Marissa Allring as well. So I thank you all for participating in that. It was a wonderful event. It really highlighted all the wonderful organizations in Moorhead. And I just want to thank everyone for their continued support, as well as the Education and Outreach Subcommittee and the volunteers on that. Again, Marissa Allring and Christy for your continued effort in that. So a lot of celebrations this year. I also want to thank you and the commissioners that were present at the award ceremony on December 11th. I unfortunately was traveling and couldn't be there, but I want to extend a congratulations to all the recipients. I know we will hear from them in the coming months, like we did today with them. And special thank you to Rachel Stone and Jen Troska for presenting those awards last Monday. So, like I said, just wanted to reflect back on the year. We had Juneteenth this year. We were able to be present there. Having Pride in the Park in Moorhead just really highlights how far we've come and how much more work we have to do as we bring on more individuals and listen to the needs of our community. I know we have regular business to talk about, such as the inclusive language within the media. I know that's a work in progress. Myself, I'm trying to partner, or we as a commission decided to partner with the Human Rights Commission in Fargo. Unfortunately, I haven't had a lot of communication so far, but I just wanted to ask, do we have any updates? I did get the information from the city regarding the First Amendment right, and the city is not able to make a recommendation for the paper of record, but that doesn't mean that the Human Rights Commission can do advocacy and outreach. So any discussion on that right
Sure, I can provide an update too.
Sure.
So I guess we can talk about it now. Yeah. And so actually, I know that Christie and Alex are both working on putting together some model language that could be used as policy to show different media outlets. They're also working on putting together some information that would help to educate people about the importance of having these policies. And I think, you know, having some good information that we can share, and also showing folks like what policies have been used in other places. I understand one of the challenges is there's so many that don't have a policy. So, but I think having some stuff going forward. So I know we talked about it. I was going to touch on it in our subcommittee meeting. They've done a lot of work on it. Other committee members, subcommittee members offered help, but that's moving along. I know we were going to ask you if you'd spoken with the chair from the Fargo Human Rights Commission, and so it sounds like that's a work we're
now? It's a
working
work
on
in
that.
progress right now, so I'm hoping as the year ends and we start back up in January, we'll have some more opportunities to speak and do some outreach.
And then I'll just mention, so I met with our city attorney, John Shockley, and so just to bring the rest of the commission up to date. So at our last meeting, we voted on two different recommendations. One of them was to collaborate with the City of Fargo Human Rights Commission on creating recommendations that would go to all of our local media outlets, encouraging them to adopt gender-inclusive language policies. And then the second one was to recommend that the city take into account whether a media outlet has gender-inclusive policies when we are choosing a newspaper of record. And so a newspaper of record is the one that posts things like, we have to do public notifications. So like, say they're doing a new planning or zoning thing, and you have to notify people that in the community, those ads get placed in our newspaper of record. And what we were told by the city attorney is there are very specific things that we can look at when we are picking a newspaper of record. So it's very prescriptive. It's laid out in state statute. And basically, it has to do with just things like geography of the, so if you have to give priority, first of all, to a media source, a newspaper that has their primary offices or location in that city. If there is none, then you can go to one that has like secondary, okay, and so on. The reason for this, it's things like, you can imagine that, say you had a newspaper that wrote unfavorable things about a city, and the city was like, well, we're not going to pick you as a newspaper of record. So because of some of the probably past abuses, the government above us, the state government, has said these are the only things that you can look at. So we are prohibited from taking that into consideration. So it wasn't that the city council wasn't that they were opposed or not. We just cannot by law take into consideration if they have a policy. So when we choose the newspaper record. So, but if anybody does have any more questions, they should talk to the city attorney. I also asked if, oh, good. Yeah, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. I also asked him what that meant for our motion, and we don't have to do anything. So we were, it's something that we voted on, and now we've received clarification. The city council won't be able to act on it, and so it just stays there. Okay, but we can still go ahead with what we had planned. The second thing that we voted on, which is to reach out to all media outlets, including our newspaper of record, and encourage them to adopt gender-inclusive policy.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Again, we will certainly work on that within the commission and our subcommittees. Any other regular business to talk about? I think I wanted to come back to the Human Rights Commission attendance. I appreciate everyone being here tonight. I know it's a busy time of year, but because of the work we have to do and the discussions and individuals to hear, and definitely our volunteers put in a lot of time too. I just want to acknowledge that being here is a commitment to the residents of Moorhead, and we want to acknowledge those that attend, and unfortunately those who don't. I think we should discuss what the plan will be for 2024 as we start a new year. If anyone has ideas in terms of how many meetings missed.
Well, I think, isn't there in the procedures document, you can only miss, what, 3 or 2 out of a year?
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know how, we just have to enforce that. I don't know who enforces it. Is it the city?
My understanding is the person that appointed.
So actually, one of the things we can share, there is policy related to all of this. And so I know the city manager recently shared it with me. And there's a several different things that we actually met with our city clerk and had a conversation about it, because there's several different things that all of our boards and commissions should be more aware of. And so there is policy about absences. You can, if I'm correct, you can, if someone misses more than a third of board or commission meetings within a year, then it is grounds for being dismissed, or 3 consecutive meetings. But there's also things that we haven't necessarily told our chairs, that there's a stage where actually the chair is, I just learned this, supposed to, you're made aware of it by our staff, and then you would remind the commissioners of the policy. So there's that. But also then the staff members are supposed to be giving the council members updates on attendance, so that because then it does come down to, as you were saying, the council members or the mayor, whoever appointed them, that they would be the one to say, to contact that person and say that they would be removing them from their position. Okay, so that's a conversation that's happening, not just about HRC, but about all boards and commissions. And so one of the changes that we just made, it just came out this week, was that, so we are in the process of getting ready to appoint people to boards and commissions. And this is actually going back to our earlier, for the last few years, we have, as a commission, recommended that the mayor and council take into account demographic information about the current boards. So for that part of it, we've been waiting. I hate, it's just, the whole convoluted way. We changed the way that our computer system for where we have all of our applications. And so it took a lot longer to actually get the information. We finally got it, and the city clerk was finally able, she just, I think, went on, I don't know how she got it. She finally was able to get it. And just this week, that went to all of the council members and the mayor this week. And also, the attendance record for all current members of boards and commissions. So actually now, the council members, as of this week, they do have that information. For every one of them, there's a spreadsheet that shows how many meetings they've attended in the last year. And okay, so then we're, as a council, we're in the process of picking people, because most of the terms that are up, if they're up at the end of this year, and then we have new ones for starting in January. But in it, we've been asked to look at that. So some of this is about to be addressed. It's something that, for a variety of reasons, so it's not just HRC, but so at least I have some good news that, yeah.
That's good to know, because we do have folks that want to be involved and are passionate, and that just don't get the opportunity. And some people have a lot going on, and they should have the option of stepping down if they feel like they can't commit to anymore.
I will also say, we know that one person has stepped down.
Yes.
And then actually the other person has not necessarily officially, but I know has told me that he's stepping down. So we can talk about it later. Yeah. So.
Good. And then in terms of appointing new individuals, did we get our report to recommend to the city council, or are we still waiting on that report from the city clerk?
So the demographics?
Yes.
So what we did is, because it got so late, I mean, it was initially going to come to us at our last meeting and then go to the council. We gave them instead we gave them HRC's recommendation, and I can now get you the demographics, but we just had it go right to because otherwise, if we'd waited to go here first and then go to them, they would have already made their decision. So we're in the process right now of making decisions about who will be appointed to boards and commissions. So, yeah, and unfortunately, some of it is less complete than in the past, because she was just simply going off of what people put on, and not everybody fills that information out. And then the last 2 years, I've actually gone on and tried to fill in the blanks for some of them by tracking down and putting identifying information on for people. So it's a little limited, but I can make sure I will forward that on. Tanya, if I send it to you, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for that update.
Yes.
Any other regular business to discuss? We will go on to subcommittee reports. For which subcommittee would like to go first? You want to go first? Oh, we can go. Yeah. So our events and awards. We had our wonderful human rights recipients this past month. So that was announced. And thank you for Tanya for arranging the reception and having that. I know the recipients appreciated it. So that's great celebration. I know we'll discuss some events, maybe upcoming, and opportunity for sponsorship that, we can be a part of. I know otherwise we don't have any other updates, I think. That's it from the boards and events subcommittee.
Go? Sure. Okay, and all of you should have gotten, I think, Tanya, thank you so much for sharing our report. And I'll just run through some highlights. So we had our meeting this Sunday. Lots of stuff to cover. One, we talked about just promoting our speakers. And I know, Tanya, we wanted to check in with you in part because I know we have a vacancy that the person for the city who had been doing our marketing media things, Mark, is leaving, or I'm not sure when his final date was. So, okay. So we just wanted to talk through with you the process for contacting speakers and then those Facebook events. So have you talked with him about that? Or because we still wanted to make sure, we haven't been getting those Facebook events for speakers. And So are you reaching out to the speakers to get their information, and then you know who would take over for those of creating the Facebook events? Okay. Okay. Yeah, and then if we figure out who's doing the Facebook events, and then have them share it with us, and then we'll pass it, then so we can share it within our communities, our contacts too. So, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. And then we were just talking about the last few. I know AADA was on for last month, and we didn't see them. And so we did think at this point we have already created the schedule for the rest of the next year. So I don't know if were they not interested in speaking, or were you not able to reach them, or?
I was unable to get that lined up. I was
Okay.
not able to.
What was AADA?
Afro-American Development
Yep,
Association. Oh,
well, their topic was going to be just inviting
talking about their
them.
group, yeah. So one of the things along those lines, we had thought what we could do instead, and I'll mention it, we're doing outreach to our community stakeholders. It's just tell them if they want to come in and do an update under this community stakeholder.
What we could do is contact Ashara, because I believe that's an organization that it works under Ashara, and it may be absorbed by that, so that's someone. we
Yeah,
can
I
contact.
wondered, because I know Connie is not there anymore.
No,
so.
and I think that the organization has been restructured.
So maybe whoever has that, Mikkel, or in our subcommittee members, whoever has that on their list of, if you're the contact person,
And I can get that information.
Okay, check in with CHUM. Okay, and then we had already just talked about changing things up for January then, and then we'll also have some other Human Rights Award folks. But I wonder, so if you think about our Human Rights Award, Brandon Beatty, maybe he may not need to come. We already have him speaking, so maybe that would be the one that of our 4 award recipients. May not make sense to have Brandon come in January. So if we have our other 2, then and then have the law enforcement presentation, I think that would be plenty.
Yeah, for January, we can have 2 human rights recipients.
And then what we did is we wanted to do a follow-up with our community stakeholders. So Tanya, you sent that letter in, it was October. Do we need to know, I know Mikkel asked me the date, just because we're actually writing notes to people saying, hey, you should have gotten this note, and in case you didn't read it. And so if you could tell us just the date so that we could put it in there, or even if we just put October.
Yeah.
Like I actually already did mine, and I just said October. You received a letter in October, but.
I can find out the specific date.
I don't necessarily need to know the specific date. I just wanted to know, if I'm sending an email following up, I want to be like, hey, you received this in October, just check it in, kind of a thing.
Yeah, so what we did is we took the list and divided it up between the 4 members of our subcommittee. And so just to do another follow-up. So they've gotten the letter from Tanya, and now, a couple months later, we can follow up with them and just, again, reiterate that we want to encourage them to come in and give us updates, that we want to work at supporting their organizations. So we're working on that. And we were talking about maybe we'll wait until I already did mine, but I was like, I want to get it done, or after the holidays, to follow up with people, just since some people may be a little busy this time of year. Then we talked. Well, I think I've already covered this stuff about the gender inclusive policy for the media, and then we were talking about youth outreach, and so. I'm really glad that Em touched on this a little bit. So this is something that we talked about, and we're also going to continue talking about it at our next meeting, but really thinking about how do we engage youth in the work of the Human Rights Commission. And one of the things that we'd like to recommend is that we look at creating a permanent youth position. So that the downside, right now, we as a commission have talked about this multiple times. We can have a youth serving. This is, I think, the only board or commission in the city of Moorhead where you can have a youth representative. But there isn't one specific. There's not like a youth position. So it would be, all right, I have a Ward 3 seat opening, and looking at among the people who have applied, is one of them a youth? If so, maybe I would appoint that person. And so there's a lot of disincentives, or even the other thing is thinking that it has to be, that person has to do it for 3 years. So Mikkel and I, several years ago, when we met with the chair of the Fargo Human Rights Commission, they have a different setup. They have, for instance, they have a seat that's for law enforcement. They have a seat that is for somebody from the public schools. We could look at creating some different places where we create positions that youth could be one of them. We might even look at some other things that we wanted to do. But in particular, as Em pointed out, it would be a voting position too. But we could, for instance, create it in a way that it could be something where you're not locked in to do it for 3 years. There could be some more flexibility, things like that. So our recommendation is that the Human Rights Commission initiate that process of seeing if we could add that. The difficulty is that would be a charter change. That's probably going to be a long process. But in the meantime, another thing that we talked about is we could perhaps create a liaison position, much like we have for law enforcement, that we know we want to have certain folks represented. We want to have a voice for folks at our meetings. We could look at creating a youth liaison position as an interim step, and then you have that, and then if anything, it might help us with that argument too of say, hey, we've created this and it's going really well, now let's make it something permanent and have that be a voting position. So those were the things that we discussed at our meeting, and I think maybe before I say anything else, maybe I'll open it up for feedback, because we're also going to talk about doing some youth outreach at our next meeting, and we'll give you updates on that of actually going out to the schools and talking to you. So,
yes, I think that's long-term goal to have a position for youth is great, but I was going to step back and say we probably need to do some outreach and see who's interested, invite students and youth and organizations to our meetings, and then build partnerships and to see if there's interest in being a part of the commission. But I think that's a great idea. Any other discussion on that?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I almost want to say, make a motion now, let's go, because I'm all about youth empowerment and getting, their voice and the representation is really, really important. But yeah, I know you said, Deb, you were saying you were going to see like applicants and who's, maybe of age, that in that age range that maybe I'm interested. But I work a lot with young people. They are like, yes, they're really passionate about, human rights, a lot of the youth that I work with. So I think it's a great idea, but I know there is a process to it with recruiting and just seeing who the interest and who to best pick.
I think it would be it would be helpful, I feel like, to have a list of who or where we could go for the outreach. I mean, some contacts in the schools, other groups there's, around the community. So if people have an idea of where we can focus to reach some kids, we could put that together.
Yeah,
if you guys can think of any.
A lot of nonprofits that are already like kind of focused in empowering our youth in that area. So yeah, if we get a list of organizations,
yep, I think that'd be helpful.
That's one way to do it.
Not just the school and
other.
Yeah.
I'll just say too, I think Commissioner Stone, because of your past experience as a school board member and your nonprofit and all of your other extensive youth work. Even though you're not on our subcommittee, I think it would be really great to have you involved in that part. And even if we were to go out and present in schools, would you be interested in? I think that'd be great.
Sure.
We also just, we were talking about, so say we did create something where we had a liaison and eventually a permanent position, and that we could have some outreach where we have help identifying, but we also wanted to make sure that, that it would be like, so if we just say reached out to the principal of Moorhead High School, I'm not trying to be disparaging, but it might end up just being like the class president or whatever. But I would rather make sure that we are reaching out and because we are the Human Rights Commission, we're working at bringing in underrepresented voices, that I'd rather look at seeing how we can make that happen with our youth representation as well. And so maybe, like we talked about, maybe, I know that the position is open right now, but the director of diversity and inclusion in the school district, that maybe that person might be able to help be someone who could connect us with someone who could be, to get the word out, to have students apply for that position.
Yeah, you do have to, if you want to bring voices, I think you have to make more of an effort than just administration. That has
And sometimes there's some who
Great.
have already repeatedly been been selected or given those opportunities for leadership,
Yes.
that.
I like the idea too of going beyond just the schools, because we have a lot of kiddos in the area that aren't in, traditional schools. So yeah, like nonprofits, different areas. I don't even know what all youth, organizations, but definitely making sure to be inclusive, that we're outreaching as well to other organizations where kids that maybe aren't in traditional school, well, we can get in touch with them.
Actually, one that it made me think of that is I met some young women a few years ago from a leadership program. It's a statewide leadership program, but they have a presence here for kids who've been in foster care. And I was just blown away by them. And so it's actually a leadership program where they work with these youth on advocating, on public policy advocacy. So they go down to the Capitol and they meet with legislators to talk about legislation related to kids in foster care, and work at developing their leadership skills and advocating for their communities and speaking on their lived experiences. And yeah, I was, as I said, just blown away. So yeah.
Would the Education and Outreach Committee like to take a lead on that, or would you like to have the Events and Awards Committee help with that?
I think we can maybe work together
Yep.
on it. Yeah. So I think that the part, I guess one thing is we're looking at, for the first part, the recommendation of, do we want to look at creating a youth position on this board?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, I think we should. I know we've had discussion about that even past couple of years, but we haven't really taken action.
But
What
to have like a liaison position
For-
instead, or I understand like in the interim because it would require
Yeah.
a charter change, but for the liaison position, that would not be a 3-year term.
It wouldn't
It could
have to
be anybody.
Mhm.
It could be-
Interested.
So for instance, I think the model we've used with Moorhead PD has worked really well, that we have this liaison. It's not something in our charter. We created that so we could have these good lines of communication. And but for instance, it doesn't say, this officer has to make a 3-year commitment, and it means we have a spot that is for somebody from Moorhead PD. But so that's where, we've even had the person in that who's our liaison change. It could change from one year to the next. In this too, we would say we want to have a youth position, and we wouldn't necessarily have to say like that person has to make a 3-year commitment. It's set aside for youth, and if that person can't serve after a certain period of time, maybe, we could work all of that out.
So the only benefit then to having an actual youth position would be the voting? Or the only change in the term?
Participation.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of questions to find out about that, and in that too, like who would then appoint? Would that go back to? Would it be? We don't have, again, we in the city of Moorhead don't have. We don't. It would probably be the mayor or the city council. Like commissions don't appoint. So we have to figure out how that process would be carried out. So how about, would you like the Education and Outreach Committee to do more of the looking into the procedural of what this would mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. And then in terms of the outreach to different communities,
Yeah, we could. The events committee could do that.
I would say, I just would like to mention that M. Christie has done a lot of legwork too, and so if they are interested in collaborating,
Sure.
so, yeah, okay, so, great. Okay, I think the only other things I had on our report were another great recommendation. I'm just going to, this is the M. Christie night, because this came from M. I loved this recommendation. So when we were at Pangea, M mentioned, how we do the hospitality suite and go out and meet, go around and greet all of the vendors and give them water. Why don't we do something like that for Pride in the Park instead of having a booth where we just sit there and nobody talks to us? So
Wonderful.
Yeah, like if it makes a lot more sense for us to be like the, ambassadors in a way. Like we could do something where we have a central spot where we've got water and things, people can come in, but we also, as commissioners, could go around and greet the folks and at the different booths and thank them for being a part of this, and that kind of welcoming, work instead of just, because, yeah, we've talked about this so many times that it is.
Lame. It's lame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we
HRC
didn't
shirts.
have our table. Yeah, we could wear our name tags in our shirts and.
Well, yeah, we would, yes,
Yeah.
yes. We would be able to, then, and we'd be there saying we're from the,
Yes.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, that's a great opportunity, I think, for any event.
I think it'd be a much bigger,
especially
better
for-
relationship building.
Yes,
So.
Pride in the Park.
I do too. I'm on board.
And yeah, and then we just set our meetings for the month, or for the year. That's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that thorough update, Outreach and Education Subcommittee. Moving on to reports, announcements, and upcoming events. I think we're going to discuss the under new business upcoming events, but any other announcements? I just want to acknowledge that December is Human Rights Month, and that's, I think, right now in the world, there's a lot of polarization. Either you're for people or you're against people. I think that, living in Moorhead, we haven't had to deal. I mean, I grew up in Moorhead, a lot of my human rights being infringed on, but I have the privilege of that growing up here. I think right now we're dealing with a lot of human crisis all over the world, and it's either you're for someone or you're against them. Hate speech because of who you are, what ethnicity, what religion should not be tolerated. Violence that's against anyone should not be tolerated. At the same time, to collectively punish people that are caught in the midst of a crisis it's terrible to see, and it's terrible that we witness that. Although we're in our homes, safety and security, I just want to acknowledge that the past 2 months it's been really difficult to hear a lot about hate. ongoing in our world. And I want to stand in solidarity with anyone affected with any of that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there's a lot of parts in the world where human rights aren't rights and basic rights are taken away. And you can hold to truths and stand for people and make sure that they are heard as well. So just wanted to say that. Any other announcements or events upcoming?
But also, I just want to thank you. That was really beautiful and powerful. Thanks. I wanted to mention that tomorrow is Homeless Memorial Day. It's an event that's held every year. Tomorrow is being the first day of winter and the longest night of the year. So there is a march in downtown Fargo. It starts at 6:15 at Broadway Square, and they will march up to First Lutheran in Fargo. They're having soup and then a memorial service in recognition of folks who have died outside. And so it's particularly important this year. We have a record number of folks that are living in terrible conditions. And so as we get into the depths of winter, I think working at making sure that we're raising awareness and doing all that we can to make sure that people are safe and have a roof over their head is really important.
Right. Thank you. Yes. It's important to be aware of our unhoused community and their needs. Moving on to new business. We do have a request from Outfront Minnesota for a town hall meeting. They have requested that we sponsor. I think that's something that we can work on. I know we have worked with other events and organizations to provide space. And I know that we will need a HRC commissioner in attendance, and I'm willing to. I'm sure I have a Tuesday night that's free, so it'd be a Tuesday night in January or early February. So that's something we can work with. I believe the Parks Department has that schedule, and the Yumcom Center, if you choose the Yumcom Center, which if they choose to have it here, we could do that. So.
So are you asking if we will formally
support?
If we will be a co-sponsor? Because
Yes.
in that case, then we can ask the city manager. Usually, we just pass it through him, and if HRC is a sponsor of the event, then typically we can provide space at no cost.
Yes. So I think that's what I'm asking. Are we willing to co-sponsor the event then with HRC?
Yes.
Perfect.
We need a motion.
Do we need a motion?
Probably.
Okay, I'll motion that we
Can I get a
sponsor.
second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we can work on that within the events and award committee. That will be our task.
Tanya, would you pass that on to the city manager to see if we would be able to then provide space at no cost since we're sponsoring the event?
Yeah.
Great.
I certainly can.
With that, any other announcements or new business?
So just wanted to go back, looping back, so transportation. I'm so glad that came up. I'm wondering if we wanted to look at accessibility issues related to our public transit, Lori Van Beek would be a good person to talk to. I wonder if we could see if she could come in to if the commission would like to have her come in to a meeting to talk about it and provide some information, and we could ask some questions, and then to me that might be the next first step. So that was one question: is would we like to have Lori Van Beek, who's our Moorhead representative on MapBus, come and talk to us about accessibility issues and the one thing it's not in my portfolio anymore, but I used to be on MapBus, and if she could bring some information about paratransit, but even that I know is not sufficient. And so if there's ways to advocate for expanding that, so paratransit is set up to help folks with disabilities by providing transportation, but that would be, I think it would be good to get some information.
What month are you
Yeah, I was
looking for
gonna
that?
ask what-
Because I can line that up.
I know our,
Well, February? Because it would be more under, it would be a pretty brief. We're not asking her to give a
that sounds good, February. Anything else? Good out of the order? Yeah, all right, it is 6:09. Thank you so much for all the discussion tonight and our guest speakers. We will adjourn.